Cancer rates are surging among younger people, and one of the most popular foods in America, maybe even the world, could be to blame. How much of it are you eating? The exam room starts now. Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thanks so very much for watching, downloading, raising your health IQ with us in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And indeed, colon cancer rates among younger people are on the rise. And the spike was actually alarming enough to have experts recommend lowering the age for screening from 50 to 45. In fact, cases of colorectal cancer for people under the age of 50 have increased by 50% over the last decade, and it's now the leading cancer-related death among men in that same age range. Experts believe now by the year 2030, how about this stat? Colorectal cancer will be the leading cause of death of all adults, both men and women under the age of 50. So what is behind this spike? Well, a new study that we're going to be talking about today is showing one of the most widely consumed foods in the standard American diet could be playing a very large role here. We're talking about red meat. From a hamburger to a juicy steak hot off the grill, and we're going to be talking all about it with Dr. Neal Barnard as he joins us once again on the Exam Room Live. He, of course, the author of The Power Foods Diet and a leading voice in health and nutrition for many decades, thanks to his endless research and work as president here at the Physicians Committee. And if there's something that you would like to ask Dr. Barnard, go ahead, drop it in the comments or in the chat. We're going to open up the doctor's mailbag in just a little bit and get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. And with that, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Barnard back to the Exam Room Live. Thanks for being here.
Hi there, Chuck. Great to be with you today.
Great to be with you, especially coming off of our big conference, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. And had this study actually come out before ICNM, I'm sure this would have been the chatter at the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C. How alarming is this to you?
Well, I think the way you put it is exactly right. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that overall, if you look at just the population in the US as a whole, colon cancer is dropping bit by bit by bit, ever so slowly. But there are two pieces of really bad news. The first piece is that not everybody is benefiting equally. If you look at, say, African Americans, although among African Americans, colon cancer rates are dropping, there is still a huge disparity. The death rates among Black Americans are much higher than among white Americans. That's point number one. Point number two is that if you look at young people, and I'm going to define young as less than 50. If you look at young people, colon cancer rates are not dropping at all. They are going up. So I think there's every reason to take this really seriously. You're talking about a cancer that is widespread and can kill you.
All right. Now, here in the United States, the average person eats about 60 pounds of red meat every single year. Without getting into the specifics of the study just yet, how much risk does that pose to that average person's health?
Well, substantial risk. The first thing is cancer is one of the issues that come up with red meat, but it's not the only one. People who consume red meat are at much higher risk of having a heart attack and any other cardiovascular disease. Stroke, for example, anything where you've got a blood vessel involved, you're at higher risk. It also increases the risk of diabetes, increases the risk of overweight, and many other problems. So your body is not going to do better with these foods.
And the World Health Organization has classified red meat as a class 2A carcinogen. What exactly does that mean, and what else is in that category?
Well, what it looks like is that red meat contributes to colorectal cancer, contributes to other things, but they use these numbers to try to differentiate degrees of evidence. So you can have, say, processed meat, it's bacon, or unprocessed meat, that's roast beef. They both might cause colorectal cancer. They may cause the same disease, but if we've got stronger evidence for bacon, they will say so. And if the evidence is a little less clear for red meat, even though it may well cause cancer as well, then it'll have a different rating in their numerical scale. But I have to say the numbers that have come out for at least 2 decades have suggested that we ought to be getting away from those products. And I would go a step further, that when we look at meat that isn't red, if we look at chicken, for example, the number one source of carcinogenic heterocyclic amines, these are cancer-causing compounds that form when meat is cooked. The number one source is not processed red meat. It's not unprocessed red meat. It's chicken. We're concerned about all meats, but I think that the new studies that have looked especially at red meat, you can certainly understand why.
All right, now let's get into this new study, which admittedly I found to be exceedingly complicated. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a researcher, I just asked the questions. But man, this one was like, wow, they really did their science. These people understood the assignment and they went to town. These researchers from the Cleveland Clinic. One of the things they were looking at were metabolite levels. Before we look at the study abroad, can we define what a metabolite level is?
Yeah. First of all, these are good researchers. They're at the Cleveland Clinic. They're at Dana-Farber in Boston, and they're doing good work. And what they looked at was not just you eat a food, it gives you cancer. They looked at how the foods that the young person might be having and other processed foods, and they might be having more cheese or less cheese. The young people eat differently than their parents or grandparents did. And all of those things seem to be altering their risk. But bottom line, meat is as unhealthy as we ever thought. And we're now finding out a little bit more about this sort of biological ballet that leads to cancer.
And how many individuals were they looking at here? Was it a large number or large enough to say that
No,
this is good enough?
it was a small number, and yes, it's good enough. The number that you need when you do research studies, whether it's ones like this that we're talking about now, or ones that we do here at the Physicians Committee, you're looking for what is the effect? How unusual is that effect? For example, if I were to test a new drug, and this drug could cure cancer overnight, and I showed that in one person, that would be amazing. If I could show it in 10 people, that would be astounding. So I don't need 100,000 people to prove it. If I've got something where there's more variability, or that the findings are more subtle, you need a larger group of people to get a clear result. In this study, they had 64 people. And so they were comparing within that 64, some were old, some were young. They all had colorectal cancer. And the goal was to really look at them in great detail and see what differences they could come up with.
Beyond the microbiome, were there any other commonalities between the individuals who seemed to be in the younger group? Were they overweight? Did they have other pre-existing conditions?
Okay, all right, great question. The groups overall were, between the young and old, were generally comparable, but exactly what you said are exactly what the researchers are thinking about. Because overweight, for some reason, does contribute to colorectal cancer. It contributes to a lot of other cancers too, like breast cancer after menopause and others. So that is, unfortunately, something that does go along with having cancer. And the cause and effect is that the overweight seems to be leading to the cancer risk. Diets overall can be less healthy in general, and alcohol use is another part of it. That if you got a young person who is a teetotaler, but their diet is exactly the same in every other respect, they will be at less risk compared to a young person who has not only a bad diet, but also is drinking regularly on top of that.
And what is it specifically about the red meat here? Generally, we don't have to talk specifically about the study, but just maybe with this and previous findings, what is it specifically about the red meat and not the potato chips or other junk food or ultra processed food that it seems to be particularly sinister in terms of cancer risk?
This has really been the question for a long period of time. And what we believe and what this study strongly suggests is that the meat, as it's going down your digestive tract, when it gets through your esophagus and through your stomach and your small intestine, there really aren't bacteria there. That's pretty clean. Once it gets into the large intestine, also called the colon, that's where your gut microbiome is. That's where all the bacteria are. And once that red meat gets there, it appears to alter the populations of bacteria that can inhabit the large intestine. So if you compare a person who eats no meat at all, they're eating all plant foods. The plants that they're eating, the fiber in those plants, as well as all the other nutrients in the plants, tend to cause certain healthy microbiome species to survive. A meat-based diet will allow those to wither and die and allow others to grow. And then these more problematic bacterial species can cause carcinogens to form. So it's a few steps. The red meat or other kinds of meat will do the same thing, will alter the bacteria that are there. The bacteria now arrive, and the bacteria will take, say, your digestive bile acids, convert them into carcinogens, and that's what kills you.
You know, Christine is watching on Facebook and at 12:16 posted what I think is actually a really good point here too. You were talking about processed meat. She said, I would also verify the actual ingredients that are added to our food, compare the products from the same companies marketed in North America as opposed to the UK. For example, she says glue that is added to lunch meat. Never really heard of glue in lunch meat, but there's all kinds of stuff in there. It wouldn't really surprise me, Dr. Barnard.
She's right. That said, you are safer eating the glue than you are eating the meat.
Oh, well,
You're because people will say, well, it's the additives that are the problem. Do you remember back when drugstores sold cigarettes? And you go in there and they would have Winston's, Marlboro's, Salem, and so forth, and they would have American Spirit.
mm-hmm.
And the person would say, well, that one doesn't have additives. There's no additives in American Spirit, so I can smoke that. And you know what you get from that? You get cancer from that, just like every other. So the problem was the tobacco. The problem wasn't the additives. And that's the same is true with meat. You can add things to it. The additives are maybe icing on the cake, but the meat itself will cause cancer.
I feel a lot better about tasting that Elmer's back in the day.
That's right.
Let's talk about prevention guidelines as they stand now. If somebody is really looking to lower their risk of colorectal cancer, colon cancer, they're under the age of 50, they don't want to become a statistic. What are the current prevention guidelines, and what is something that you, Dr. Barnard, would also suggest adding to them?
Okay, maybe the first thing I should say is that colonoscopy does play an important role. So yes, it's good to change your diet, but you're not Superman or super person. You can get colorectal cancer even if you're on a perfect diet. Let's face it, we're breathing the air, we're drinking the water, we're eating foods, and genetics will sometimes rear their ugly head. And so there is value to having a colonoscopy. Now, your own doctor can talk to you about your family history and decide when to start and what the frequency of that should be. But for a lot of folks, it's started around age 45 and do it every 5 years. In some cases, a little bit more frequently or less frequently, but your doctor can guide you. But here's a really important thing. You'll turn on the TV and you'll see maybe a commercial for Cologuard. A Cologuard is a little camera you swallow. There are there's value to products like that. But what you don't want to do is to have a test that finds cancer. Colonoscopy is designed to find things that will one day become cancer. So when you have a colonoscopy, it does something that other things don't do. It will find a polyp. And the polyp isn't carcinogenic. I'm sorry, the polyp is not a cancer, but it's going to become a cancer in many, many cases. So the gastroenterologist doing the test can very cleverly just remove that little polyp, can send it to a lab to make sure it's not cancer already, and can say, you don't have that risk anymore. So that's what it's really about. The whole idea here is not to wait till you get cancer. The idea is to get rid of things that look like they could become cancer. That said, the less alcohol we drink, the better off we are, the more we have vegetables and fruits, the lower our cancer risk. You want to avoid animal products, generally speaking. Meats are the worst in this regard.
All right. And just doctor's prescription for us here. What would be the recommended amount of fruits, vegetables, whole grains for somebody if they really want to do a bang up job lowering that risk of cancer as much as possible?
I I would put it really informally. I would say eat an abundance of vegetables and fruits, and you can have them at every meal. Yes, you can have broccoli at your breakfast. There's no reason not to. People do it in their omelet. Just skip the omelet and have the vegetables be part of it. The reason that I put it that way is you will see people say have 3 servings, have 5 servings, have 8 servings. And I'm afraid that people have kind of lost meaning of what does it mean to have 8 servings of fruits and vegetables? I don't even eat 8 times a day. What do I do with that? So I think those guidelines are harder to implement. The way I like to think of it is when you eat, make sure that vegetables are part of it and an abundance of it. In fact, you can even plan your dinner not with what's at the center of the plate and the vegetables as an afterthought. You can plan your dinner starting with the vegetables and making sure that they're there. Same with fruits. Fruits are not just an afternoon snack or just a dessert. They should really be part of it, part of our meal times as well.
All right, we're going to talk about some breaking news in the diabetes world, also tied to meat consumption in just a little bit. But I want to bring up a point that was raised by our friend Richard Hubbard in the chat. This was, he's watching us on Facebook today. He posted this at 12:18. And it's a valid question. It's like, why don't we have a warning label on red meat like we do cigarettes? I will say that red meat, by the World Health Organization, as we mentioned earlier, that's classified as a 2A carcinogen. But processed meat, which includes some red meats, is a class 1, which is in the same group as tobacco. Why do we have the warning label on one, but not the other, Dr. Barnard?
Because of politics. It is all politics. It took an act of Congress to get a warning label on tobacco, and it would probably do the same to get one on meat. And I would argue, as I mentioned earlier, that red meat is not the only issue. If you take organic, skinless chicken breast that you bought at Whole Foods, and if you heat it up on the grill, cancer-causing chemicals form in the chicken. And our research team proved this. We went in the state of California, which does regulate carcinogens in foods, and they're supposed to be reported to the government. We went into all the fast food and family chain restaurants like Applebee's and Chick-fil-A and every place where they sell grilled chicken. In every single one of these establishments, we bought grilled chicken products, sent them to a laboratory, and they found carcinogenic heterocyclic amines in every single establishment, in every single sample. Why? Because red meat, processed red meat, and white meat are all skeletal muscle. What's skeletal muscle? It's your bicep, or the muscles that a chicken uses to move their wings, or that a cow uses to move their legs. That skeletal muscle, when it is heated, causes carcinogens to form. And the more you heat it, the more they form. So you're grilling chicken, it's a problem. So your question is a really good one. Why do we not have warnings? We need warnings. But it's not just the red meat. The others are a problem too. And that also goes for wild-caught salmon from the North Atlantic. You heat it, you get carcinogens.
All right, let's switch over to diabetes, more groundbreaking research, breaking news, hot off the press out in terms of diabetes risk and total meat consumption. First, though, I want to say hi to Karen, who's watching us today over across the pond and had some dental work. And so she's kind of recovering, has an achy mouth, but raising her health IQ. So feel better soon, Karen. All right, Dr. Barnard, this other diabetes research that just broke here, talk to us about what they found in terms of overall diabetes risk and meat consumption. Is this new data that we're learning?
A great study, Chuck, from Oxford University. It was published in the Lancet Diabetes Endocrinology, which is one of the Lancet journals. And by the way, salute to the Lancet. Editor-in-Chief Richard Horton kicked off the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine last Thursday, so thank you for that. But what they did is researchers have been looking at meat intake and diabetes for a long period of time. And it's been clear that meat drives diabetes risk upward. What's new about this is that they did now a meta-analysis that included many different studies and grouped their findings together. And it had almost 2 million adults involved in this study. I mean, just astoundingly large study. And what they found, oh, and by the way, they're from all over the world. They're from North America, Europe, Asia, and so forth. Anyhow, what they found is that the more meat you eat, the higher your risk of diabetes. We knew that already. But they said processed meat, yes, that's a problem. Processed meat means bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, hot dogs. Unprocessed red meat was part of the problem as well. And poultry was part of the problem as well. So we're talking about turkey or chicken. Why do I care about that? Because so many people say, well, don't give me the bacon. Give me the turkey bacon. That's the healthier one. They all seem to be associated with a higher risk of developing diabetes. One other thing, by the way, Chuck, is that they looked at obesity. Many of the prior studies have said, well, we want to adjust for diabetes. Adjust our diabetes risk numbers, adjust for obesity, because we know that obesity will drive diabetes too. And they said, well, let's look at that by taking the obesity out of it. You still see, independent of the fact that eating a lot of fried chicken might make you gain weight, the chicken will do it even if it doesn't. So it's not, the obesity is not the only issue. But the researchers said, well, if these foods cause weight gain, and if weight gain in turn drives a higher risk of diabetes, you don't want to just completely eliminate that. So the point is, whether you adjust for the weight gain effect or not, either way, you're going to see a higher risk with chicken. You're going to see a higher risk with poultry in general, higher risk with red meat, whether it's processed or unprocessed.
Um, how in the world does a researcher get their hands on data from 2 million people? Like, that is an enormous study. Where do these people come from?
Yeah, well, the way they did it, it's a meta-analysis. So what they took is the results of other research studies. So there are dozens of other researchers have been looking at this, doing the recruitment. And what these Oxford researchers did is they contacted all those individual researchers and said, you give us your data, we'll pool it with the other data. And so you get a much more comprehensive data set.
Gotcha. And would I be correct in assuming that the countries who tend to have the lowest total meat consumption may also see then the lowest total rates of diabetes? Is there a direct correlation there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's changing. This is an important point, Chuck, actually. The diets are changing in many of these countries, which has been a problem before, because let's say it's 1960. And Japan at that time did not have a meaty diet. I mean, it was a rice-based diet. A lot of vegetables, some fish, not enormous amounts, some meat, the occasional egg, not a lot. Well, as the Japanese diet has westernized, there's a lot more meat, more fish, less rice, less vegetables, that kind of thing. If the only diet assessment you took was before the diet westernized, and then you follow these people for decades, and it's harder to tell who's getting cancer and who isn't in relation to food. What these researchers started looking at is, wait a minute, let me focus on the studies where you're actually tracking their diets as their diets are changing. Diets are westernizing in Japan and throughout Asia, China in particular. You're seeing a lot of westernization. So they weren't eating so much pork 10 years ago. They're eating a huge amount of it now. And so when we adjust for those things, the patterns become more and more clear.
All right, now let's go ahead and open up the doctor's mailbag and grab some of your questions. This one seems to be really a big talker right now in the chat. Somebody is wondering about, this is Martin's question, whether grass-fed and organic beef have a lower risk of cancer compared to what you might find on store shelves.
No, they don't. They're just as much of a problem as the so-called non-organic, say corn-fed beef. Because what's happening? First of all, what you're eating is the cow's skeletal muscle. And when skeletal muscle is heated, and the hotter the temperature, the more it's heated, the more these carcinogens form. That's number one. Although I said chicken is the number one source of carcinogenic heterocyclic amines, and it is. It also comes from beef and any other source of skeletal muscle. Second thing is whether it's organic, whether it's free range or not, there's no fiber in it. There is no fiber in any animal product. So if the grass-fed beef cattle ends up on your plate, you're not getting any fiber at all. The safer thing to do would be to eat the grass. Or maybe you don't do that, you eat the plant that the cow ate. That's where the fiber is. The cow's body is like a machine. The cow's body is like a processing machine. It takes grass or takes corn or whatever you feed the animal, and they take the fiber out. Their digestive tract pulls the amino acids apart and restructures them into new proteins. Takes the fat out and restructures the fat to make it higher saturated fat. We're used to thinking of food processing as occurring in a factory, but that factory can be a biological factory that we call a cow, or that we call it chicken. The corn goes in, the muscle tissue comes out, and it's been transformed even more than a factory would do.
All right. This next comment is one that I want to address with class. And this is non-judgmental here. This is a comment from Ardentic at 1226. Now, Ardentic says, meat, the stuff that I'm wearing all over my bones, are supposed to give me cancer, with a bunch of laughing emojis. Now, clearly, Ardentic does not agree with the conversation that we're having today. But what they may be surprised to know is that there once was a time when I would agree wholeheartedly with this comment. And it is something that the old me fully would have embraced at 420 pounds. The new me looks at this, and after receiving a lot of education personally and through all of the conversations that we've had here on the show, views things much differently. Now, I would say that and say, yeah, well, meat, we do produce it. It is our muscles as well. But then the new me would also say, well, now, wait a minute. At 420 pounds, I also had a lot of fat all over my body. Was that healthy then? And so I look at things much differently. I would love to get your opinion on that, and how we might begin to open up and have intelligent conversations based off of comments like this, so that we can get other people to realize that, there's more to it than that, Dr. Barnard. Again, I'm not trying to troll the troll. I'm trying to have an intelligent conversation here. I just want to preface that.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. And let's face it, we're talking about a pretty grim thing. And science itself is mind-numbingly grim, just because it's so detailed. And when we're talking about something that can kill you, it's understandable that people are looking for maybe some way to not have to deal with it. But here's one way to think about it. Many cancers arise in what we call the endothelial tissue. What that means is your digestive tract, your intestinal tract. What's it doing? It's absorbing nutrients from the foods you eat. So there's one single cell layer in the surface of your intestinal tract. If it was more than that, the nutrients couldn't get through. So it's one single cell, one single layer of endothelial cells that the nutrients have to pass through. What does that mean? That means you have almost no protection, again, between what is going down your digestive tract and your bloodstream, which is on the other side of it, where the nutrients are trying to go. And it means that single cell layer can be very, very easily damaged. So if I cook up a burger or some chicken or something like that, and carcinogens form, those carcinogens are going down my digestive tract. They are rubbing against that one single cell layer that you've got, and they can cause changes in the DNA, in the nucleus of those cells. And that's where the cancer can arise. So it's very easy. And by the way, we see this in the other parts of the body too. In a woman's breast, the breast ducts are little tiny tubes as well, sort of like your intestinal tract is a big tube. And there's a single cell layer inside there too. And when breast cancer arises, that's the most common site for it, inside those little ducts, because things that are in that part of the body can cause cancer. So it's a serious problem. And in case we didn't say this at the outset, a boy born today has a 50% risk of getting cancer at some point. A girl born today has about 30-40% chance of getting cancer in her lifetime. So it's really behooves us to look at what causes it and to do what we can to avoid those exposures to the extent that it's possible.
Yeah, guys, and you think that when comments like that get posted, like you think that it's a rib, but again, you got to remember, like, a lot of people who are watching this show, and again, myself included, we were you. I still identify a lot with what it is that you're saying. And my job here is just to be the conduit to different kind of information and education. We look at the studies that you guys send us in response to a lot of things that we say. We're always open to having an open conversation about this. We just want to do it with class and not personal attacks. So if there's ever anything that you are curious about, so like, hey, I found the study that said that bacon lowers my risk of cancer. We would love to see it. We would love to look at that data and to see how these researchers arrived at those results. It's an open conversation. And Dr. Barnard, I know that going back to conversations you and I have had about who gets picked to speak at our conference, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, a lot of them are really kind of opening eyes or relieve jaws agape for people who are wholly plant-based, because they may be talking about eating chicken or they may be talking about eating fish. And, data is data, and we're open to having conversations on every level.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think also people are right to be skeptical about things. If somebody says to you, here's a food that could hurt you, I think people are right to be skeptical and say, prove it to me. And the same is true if somebody says, here's a diet that can really help you. I think people are right to be skeptical about that too. Why? Because there's a lot of nonsense out there. There are all kinds of fad diets and goofy things and product claims and people trying to exonerate products. Senator Marshall from Kansas, famously, he was in DC at the end of last year, and he was being interviewed, and he said, the problem isn't red meat. The problem is processed meat. What he was trying to say is, you got to eat Kansas beef and don't say anything bad about it. Well, people kind of roll their eyes and they just sort of give up. What I suggest that we do is not worry too much about how people react, but to be honest with the information. Because people, let's face it, people in Kansas and people everywhere else, people in my family. I grew up in North Dakota. My grandpa was a rancher. My cousins and my uncles, in the same business. These are good people, and they're right to be skeptical of things that might threaten their world, but they're at risk. They're not our enemies; they're our families. And so our job is to simply give information out to people who can use it, and then to help people to embrace it and to find better alternatives. And we're certainly getting there, and that's what we see. So remember, the body is a fragile thing. That one little cellular layer on the inside of your intestinal tract has to put up with an awful lot. Think of all the cheeseburgers and fries and junk that we put down our digestive tract, and we're drawn to these foods. There are whole industries that are there designed to make us love foods that don't really love us back. So that's the world that we're in. The good news is that we're having clearer evidence than ever before. People can look at that evidence, and as time goes on, their skepticism will hopefully give way to making logical decisions.
Absolutely. And whatever decision you have, just know that on a personal note, I respect you, and you are absolutely 100% entitled to your opinion. And I welcome a healthy conversation with you. I think that, it's great. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. Now, that's that. Let's go ahead and move on, wrap things up with a couple of more questions. Number one, Gabriel at 1224, do grilled vegetables also have carcinogens, Dr. Barnard?
Oh, wow. What a great question. You could take a beef burger. You heat it up, grill it, carcinogens form, these heterocyclic amines form. You could take a turkey burger, you heat it up, what happens? Carcinogens form. You take a veggie burger made of soy or wheat gluten or vegetables. You heat them up, and what happens? They get warm. That's what happens. So the heterocyclic amines come from skeletal muscle being heated. And one of the nicest things about broccoli is it doesn't have any skeletal muscle.
All right, Andrew, pre-submitted question. Can a diet that is high in antioxidants help to protect against colon cancer?
A definite probably. What antioxidants do is that antioxidants look for compounds called free radicals. Free radicals are produced in your body all the time. They're sort of a kind of factory waste that comes out of cells and comes out of reactions in your bloodstream. And free radicals are unstable molecules that can damage your DNA and lead to cancer. And antioxidants knock them out. So what are they? Beta carotene. That's the orange color in a carrot, of course. in a sweet potato, in a mango, in a papaya, in a cantaloupe. That you can see it from 100 yards. That orange color is beta carotene. Lycopene, that's the red color, in a watermelon, in a tomato. And the anthocyanins are this huge, broad category. They are the blue in a blueberry, that kind of funny red in a strawberry, and there are lots and lots of others. So if you eat for color, you'll get the antioxidants, and they can reduce cancer risk overall.
All right. And next to last from Jean at 1226, watching on Facebook today, wondering about dairy and its influence on cancer and diabetes.
Dairy products, as bad as they are for so many other things, will reduce the risk of colorectal cancer. When people have high dairy diets, their risk of colorectal cancer drops. Now, why would that be? They've got bad fat in them, just like beef. Yes, they do. In fact, they're the leading source of bad fat, but they have a lot of calcium in them. And the calcium is, for the most part, not absorbed. I know that's a big surprise. You drink a glass of milk, 68% of that calcium in the milk isn't absorbed. You don't absorb it, so your bones can't use it. They use about 32% of it. The rest of it stays in the digestive tract and seems to reduce cancer risk. Now, people have said, well, wait a minute, but milk increases the risk of prostate cancer. It probably increases the risk of breast cancer. Do I want to take it in hopes that it helps my colon? No. You want the benefit comes not from milk per se. It comes from only the calcium. So if you can get a calcium-rich food that also has fiber, like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, there you're way ahead of the game. But so dairy does contribute to other kinds of cancer, not colorectal cancer. That they are healthier sources of calcium.
And so you dropped the F word there, fiber. That seems to be big for lowering the risk of a lot of various forms of cancer, including colon cancer, correct?
Absolutely. That's kind of how it became famous in the first place. Dr. Dennis Burkitt, who was a huge friend to the Physicians Committee, tremendous surgeon, and really made fiber a household name. Colorectal cancer was one of the first things that he was observing when he was doing his missionary surgery work in Africa back decades ago.
And lastly, Fluffy Cotton. I like that name. Fluffy Cotton at 1223. I am not usually big on consuming red meat, and I've been wondering how I can compensate for the vitamins that were in the meat without taking supplements. So, somebody cuts meat out of their diet, but there are beneficial nutrients in there, vitamins and nutrients and things like that. What are some other healthier sources that they could turn to make sure that they're still getting adequate amounts?
Oh, it's a great question. And when we put this to the test, what we find is that people who have a fair amount of meat in their diet, they actually have poorer overall nutrition than people who stop eating meat. And let me say that again. People who eat meat have poorer overall nutrition. When you look at their vitamin intake and their complex carbohydrates and so forth, they have poorer nutrition compared to a person who doesn't eat meat. Why is that? Because when you take the meat out, the vegetables and fruits find a place to come into your diet, and meat doesn't have any vitamin C, doesn't have any fiber. What you're putting in its place does have those things. So your diet quality is overall going to improve. You're going to get a better mix of vitamins and minerals and so forth. Even so, you want to have good planning, and good planning means 4 food groups: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and the legume group or the bean group, and do take a vitamin B12 supplement every day. You need it for healthy nerves, healthy blood, not optional. Yes, there are a lot of plant-based foods that are fortified with B12, but be on the safe side, take a B12 supplement. You do that, your nutrition just got dramatically better. If a meat eater tries to get good nutrition, meat doesn't have fiber, so go to the store and get a fiber supplement. It doesn't have vitamin C, take a vitamin C pill. It doesn't have the carotenoids that you're going to find in carrots or broccoli or green vegetables, so they're going to be supplementing those kinds of things. It's harder to get good nutrition as a meat eater, much easier on a plant-based diet.
And that kind of goes to the old term of overfed and undernourished with that standard American diet. I love that term. I think that rings true in so many instances.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're getting a lot of calories, a lot of fat, extra protein, more than you need, and not getting the vitamins and minerals that Mother Nature was hoping would be there.
Boy, I'm not so sure that we were overfed at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. At least nobody really, said so because, man, the eats there, Dr. Barnard, were world class. The chefs this year at the Grand Hyatt really stepped up their game and took our food to the next level. And I know just thinking back to all of the speakers and the great education that we got, the food still continues to be the highlight year after year.
It's really wonderful how the two work together because many people come here, they're interested in nutrition, but don't maybe perhaps know a lot about it. There are a great many doctors there who want to put this to work, but they don't know quite where to start. So they get the knowledge and the lectures, and then they go out and now it's lunchtime and they see all the possible choices open to them and the recipes are available. So it's really become a wonderful learning experience. It was a tremendous event, I have to say. And by the way, let me salute Jill Eckert, Dustin Harder, and the whole team who really did an enormous amount of work to make sure that the food was great and that the overall conference ran smoothly.
And how about the cooking competition that we had with hospital chefs on night one of the conference? This was new for us, dabbing into the game show kind of arena, man. But I know that we had some amazing culinary geniuses up on stage with us this year.
It was kind of an Iron Chef's competition. I think the thing was remarkable just that it could happen to have hospital chefs who, let's face it, have kind of gotten a little bit of a bad rap all along, that hospital chefs would want to compete. And by the way, what we saw there was the three top ones. There were dozens of them that wanted to participate. They wanted to compete, and they got kind of weeded out as the competition proceeded. But what we had on that Thursday night was the three top chefs, and there was a winner and there was a second and a third. They were all Olympic quality. They really were, and that to me bodes well for the future. If hospital food could contribute to the healing and really be part of that process, so much to the good.
Absolutely. And we got a lot of good interviews for the exam room at the conference, including one with Lily Correa, who was instrumental in the healthy hospital menus up in New York City. So we're going to get some great insight for her. But then also I was able to sit down with Dr. Monica Agarwal on the final day of the conference, right before she presented her findings on that big olive oil study that you and I were talking about recently on the show. So in fact, we do have an opportunity to post this interview with Dr. Agarwal where we go in depth in the big olive oil study that she conducted. And it was just fascinating to get her insight on this, Dr. Barnard. That was one of the highlights for me.
Well, Chuck, I got to tell you, the old-fashioned approach to a conference is that you select your speakers and, 6 months later, everybody shows up and you have a conference. And, we do that too. There are many people we pick and they agree to come. But that study came out, just a couple of weeks ago. You and I did a program on it. And Dr. Agarwal is a tremendous cardiologist in Florida and instrumental in policy formation with the American College of Cardiology. I called her up after our episode. I said, you need to get on a plane. You need to come to Washington and you need to speak at this conference. And she said, I'm there. And she presented her data, blew the audience away, made some people a little bit upset. The people in the oil industry who had been pitching extra virgin olive oil as the be all and end all, and she just blew them out of the water. And by the way, she said the same thing that you said about the food. Great food. Anyway, it was a terrific conference, and I think we've got our finger on the pulse here of what's going on in the world of nutrition.
For sure. And she really did. She took us inside the study, how it was conducted, and, admitted some of the limitations that she found in there. And she has these great ambitions to repeat the study on a broader scale. So hopefully we can see that in the future with her. Just amazing findings. And we're going to be posting that interview here in very short order. But we can't close today without giving a tip of the hat to the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund, who continues to be such a great supporter of us here at the Physicians Committee and at the exam room, because they support organizations just like ours that are carrying on the love that Greg Ryder had for animals by promoting plant-based health and working to end animal abuse while also emphasizing programs that promote systemic change. So it benefits us as human beings as well. You can see everything that they're up to by visiting the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund online at gregoryryderfund.org. That's Gregory Ryder, spelled Reiter fund.org. They are just such great supporters of ours here at the exam room and the Physicians Committee as a whole, Dr. Barnard.
Greg was such a wonderful person. And Allison has carried his whole spirit, his love for animals, his kindness forward in such a beautiful way. And I'm so grateful to Allison and her team for making our work possible here.
So look, thank you so much to Allison and everybody at the Ryder Fund. Want to echo that. And I also want to echo that we've got a lot of big events coming up, including what continues on the Power Foods Revolution Tour. We're going to be back up in New York City, Dr. Barnard. Myself, Chef Dustin Harder, and maybe some others as well on October 5th. Can't wait for that. That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, we got some great things on the calendar. Actually, before that, let me shout out Alan Desmond, who is here from England. And he said, Neal, if you're ever in England, why don't you come by and we'll do an event? And I think he didn't think I would take him seriously, but I did. I said, Alan, I'll be right over. So I'm going to be in Exeter, England on September 12th. September the 12th, Exeter, that's the west part of England. Come on over. And I know you've got exam roomies in Western England. Philadelphia, October 4th, New York, October 5th, and that's going to be the big one. And Chuck, do you mind? I need to say to all of my childhood chums in Fargo, North Dakota, where I grew up, October 9th, we're going to be at the Fargo Theater on Broadway doing the Power Foods Revolution in Fargo. So,
hey, that's come. Big time stuff right there. The Power Foods Revolution comes to Fargo. Like that's actually huge.
We haven't had anything there since 2017. And we are overdue, so I'm hoping that all my Fargo friends will come on October the 9th.
Man, we gotta, if we ever get back down to Norfolk to do a show, that would be great. My hometown too. I think that there's a certain thrill that comes with doing something in your hometown. So you get a little extra jitters, maybe a couple butterflies before you head on stage there.
My main thing is, to tell you the truth, that's a place where, like so much of our country, particularly in the Midwest, you're seeing people whose health is eroding. We're seeing more obesity, more diabetes, more problems. And my hope, and whenever I can come back home and maybe take some of what our research has shown and some of the things we've learned in it, we can share it with those that are in our family and the people we love most. That's really a good thing. So I know you feel that way about Norfolk, and I got to tell you, I do too. And I'm hoping that our Fargo friends will come out in October. And Chuck, I think everything is it all at pcrm.org/events.
You got it.
Did I get that right?
You nailed it. You nailed it. And you also nailed the pronunciation of Norfolk like a native there, man. I'm proud to know you, sir.
I speak Southern as a second language.
One more quick event I want to shout out also, Davis, West Virginia, the Wellness Weekend with our friend and fellow Food for Life instructor, Brenda Workman. I'm going to be speaking there September 27th and 28th. BrendaWorkmanSpeaks.com is where you can go for information on that. There's also a link in the episode notes. And our colleague, Betsy Watson, wants me to remind everybody that football season, bear with me here, football season is almost here. And that is the perfect time to become an exam room VIP because she says, now look, we want to invite everybody to get into the game of health. Just as we've been raising our health IQs today, we have this amazing ebook designed specifically for athletes. And so if you are interested in picking up a copy of this free ebook, head over to pcrm.org/athlete. We get into all about how to build your muscles without meat. All the science is right there for you. And also when you sign up, you also will become an exam room VIP. Tap into all of the perks that come with that, like exclusive access to interviews with the biggest names in health before we post them here for everybody else on YouTube and Facebook. You get first crack at that, plus special events, our monthly resources from our doctors and dietitians here at the Physicians Committee to take that health IQ to the next level. And specifically for you athletes, you got to get your hand on this ebook, whether you are power walking up to the end of the street or training for the next Ironman competition. The tips are in there that can help keep you fit and strong as you get ready for whatever that athletic adventure may be. So pcrm.org/athlete is where you need to go to get your hands on that free ebook. Man, we got a lot going on, Dr. Barnard. Holy smokes, I'm exhausted after this one.
Well, there's a lot going on, and I got to say it's a fun thing to be able to meet our exam room family, wherever they may be.
Amen to that, my friend. And that is all the time that we have. What a great show. What a great show we did today. I mean, 2 groundbreaking studies talking about cancer, talking about diabetes, and just taking the health IQ to the next level. Thank you so very much for your time, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chuck.
And to the crew behind the scenes, thank you for making the magic happen. And to the exam roomies, thank you for such wonderful conversation in the chat today and great questions to help everybody's IQs, health IQs, get taken to that next level. And on behalf of everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again very soon. But until then, keep it plant-based.